have to take a breath and arrive. Yeah, do that with me, everybody. Take a deep breath. Now, I think we can be a little more aroused than that. So let's try that one more time. Let's take a deep breath, and then we're going to release it like arousal sounds. Take a deep breath with me. Yeah, much better, much better. That is arousal, arousal, arousal. And I chose talking about arousal tonight on purpose in this love revolution that we're here for tonight. And what it is that really keeps us sparked, what keeps us turned on, and what the heck is arousal? What is it? Where does it come from? How do I get it? Where did mine go? Is it under the bed? Did I lose it forever? Will it ever come back? Does it ever leave? Where is arousal? How do we get it? How do we keep it? And why on earth would you want it? Ha-ha. Whoa. And so I want to suggest that we want it for a lot of reasons. And one of the reasons is that when I'm aroused, what does arousal mean? It means to be awake. It means to be stirred into action. It means to be kicked into movement. And so when I'm aroused, it keeps me moving. It keeps me active. It keeps me alive. And when I'm sexually aroused, that sexual arousal comes from that core essence of my life force. Like we all got here because somebody was aroused in some fashion, or we wouldn't be here. There was arousal in the space when you came through. And so keeping arousal alive in our life changes the way in which our life looks. And I know people in my life especially as we age and we're like, oh, man, it might be done with that. Shirley and I, one of the reasons we met at that time, one of the Tantra weekends was because we said we could either go home and get a dog and knit jackets for that dog and spend our life, or we were going to do it really different and we were going to age really differently and wanted to do that in an awakened and alive way. So arousal is to awaken. It's to stir into action. And so along those lines, arousal, when we think about it, I'm going to talk specifically. So there's lots of different kinds of awakening, right, and arousal. And the one I'm going to talk about tonight is sexual arousal. And how does that happen? And one of the things we know about arousal is that the first thing we've got to have is attraction. Like there needs to be an attraction between you and the person before you can find your arousal. And so there was this arousal study. So I'm dinging. Something's clicking. Can you all hear? It's my earring. Oh, thank you. Okay, I'll just take that off. No, don't do that anymore. Great. Okay. It's really irritating. And so arousal or attraction, they did this really great study. I want to tell you about this study that they did. At the Capilano Suspension Bridge in North Vancouver, Canada. There's two bridges. One of them is this really wobbly, slatted bridge. You get out there and it's shaky and it goes over a really large ravine and it's kind of sketchy. And they put a woman out there with a clipboard and questions. And whenever a man came through, she stopped and she asked if she could do a survey about arousal. And she asked him, attraction. And she asked him questions about his attraction. And then at the end, she said, here's my card. You can take this and you can give me a call tomorrow and I'll give you the results of the study. She did the same thing on a lower bridge that's super solid. It's like planted, it's not wobbly, it's not sketchy, super like solid. And you know what the real study was the men that called her the next day to get the results. The men on the wobbly bridge called. The men on the solid bridge did not. The men on the wobbly bridge not only called, they screwed up the excitement or the nerve to also ask her out on a date. And so there was excitement creates attraction. And attraction is where arousal begins. So where is your excitement and how do you activate that? Now the other part about arousal, so arousal begins with attraction. So then when we start to look at that arousal, there are three areas in our lives that are really important to help keep us aroused. And I'm going to go over these, starting with the body. So there's an arousal system in our body. I love talking about the arousal system in our body. I call it our inner landscape. It's all those things that are inside the body that cause that physical arousal. It's super important, and there's lots of things that can get in the way in our body. Different kinds of injuries can happen, different kinds of disconnects in our physical. But for the most part, our body does a number of things. We have clitorises and we have penises. These are obvious arousal systems. I'm going to talk about them in a second. We have 5 senses. We have touch and what that does and all the oxytocin and things that go through our body. We have the senses in the brain and how we get chemicals when we're in connection with each other. And sex like floods our brains with all kinds of things like dopamine and serotonin. So there's all kinds of ways that our body creates or handles arousal, that brain chemistry part. And in this body part, the part I want to talk about I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because our time is limited, but I want to go to the vagina or to the vulva, this outer area. And I want to point out that the inside, the hidden part, is the black drawing. And the red is what you visually see. And there's lots of parts, and for a long time, we thought all of the big arousal and orgasm came from that sweet little pearl called the clitoris. And what we have since learned, and you know they didn't start getting serious about studying clitorises until 2002. Now, what is wrong with that picture? And then they let us believe for a long time that all the clitoris was that little pearl right at the tip. And then we find out that it's actually a big whole network of things. And the network works like this. So we all know the little pearl up there at top. Watch this. Oh, look at that. So here's the little pearl. Here's the little pearl. That's the glands. The pearl from the pearl, I don't know if I can do that and not wobble. The pearl goes up the shaft. So we all have envision, if you will. So envisioning, if you will. Think to yourself, how many of these have you looked at? Have you ever looked at your own, if you happen to own one? Or is it kind of a mystery even to you? And the women I work with, it is more a mystery than a knowing. I cannot tell you how normal it is for you to not know all of this. Like, don't feel bad if you don't know. It's really not that far off. So we've got the shaft that goes from that sweet little pearl. The pearl has 8,000 nerve endings in it, by the way. That's a lot of nerve endings. And those nerve endings go all through and connect to this system. We've got the legs. That's the clitoral legs that come down. Then we have the clitoral bulb that comes down. I kind of think of that in those canyons that are between the inner lips and the outer lips, that canyon part. Those bulbs run down through that. Then we have this whole network that runs down through this, from the bulbs down around this way. Now we've got this network that goes down, and that network goes down, goes all the way across the perineum and around the anus. There's yummy, feel-good clitoral network around the anus. Now, isn't that a miracle? And we just don't even think about it much. Some of us don't think about the anus much as an arousal place, but there's actually a tremendous amount there, too. Inside, it goes from the clitoris, from this little pearl. Over here is the cluster, or the G-spot that's right inside there. Those are connected through a neural network that runs around our urethra. There's the urethra. And this urethral sponge, all of that connects. It goes around the mouth of the vaginal opening. And so there's a whole piece of arousal that happens that's not just at the pearl, but it's all of that internal landscape. So here's a part that really makes this, if you think about it, these parts are all erectile tissue, just like a penis. And a penis can get erect depending on the age of the person having the erection. A teenager can take 10 to 20 seconds. That gets a little bit longer as you get older, but still, it doesn't take long, and it's really visible, and you can see it, and you can know if it's working or not. But the female one is a little trickier because it's way inside, it's arousing inside, it's erecting inside, and you're not always sure it's working the way you want it to work, and you don't really know if it's going where you want it to go. And we have so much expectation on it looking a certain way and having a certain kind of reaction. And so because that erectile tissue, here's another fascinating part about this erectile tissue, that sweet little pearl up there, when we were in utero, and we were in the first trimester, all of our body parts were just starting to, form and gather and collect and what have you. And that this erectile system, for the first 3 months, is the same. And that what happens is that clitoral pearl pops out and becomes the head of the penis. It gets wrapped around with this beautiful flesh of the hood, and the inner lips make the foreskin. And the erectile tissue that gets hard is done so through the flow of blood, right? And it's the same for the female anatomy. It's the flow of blood that causes everything to plump up. The vaginal canal increases by 1 to 2 inches in depth because it's got to make room for something that might be coming its way. So there's a lot of things. It has to start to lubricate to make it able to receive. There's a whole lot of internal mystery that's happening when we don't even know it. And it takes a woman 20 to 25 minutes to get erect. When you pit that against a 20-second penis, there's a real miss in the warm-up, right? And I have clients all the time, women come in and they say things like, I don't have enough lubrication, I'm too dry. I say, how long? Are you foreplaying? How long? What are you doing? Do you know it takes 25 minutes? I watch men's faces drop. 25 minutes? The average lovemaking session in the United States right now is 7 minutes. But if I don't hurry, I'm not going to get through this. So, over here, we get to talk about the lovely and wonderful penis. I want to apologize straight up that that this particular penis does not show his foreskin. When I go online and I look for, and I hunted, and I hired an artist, and I looked for a penis that would have its foreskin, and it's really rough to find one that's got everything labeled. So I want you all to imagine with me that right in here is some extra flesh, except that when the foreskin, those men who have foreskin, when the penis gets hard, the foreskin actually goes, melds in here on the sides. And an erect penis with a foreskin and an erect penis without a foreskin, not so different. They're pretty darn similar. But what we have here is the same glands up here that is the pearl of the clitoris. And then we've got this here that fills with blood, the corpora cavernosa and the corpus spongiosum. We've got these, all fills with blood, everything erects, and it gets hard. In the middle of all of it is the urethra. And then we've got the testicles, we've got the vas deferens, which is where the sperm comes from, and then hidden, again, I can't get a picture, can't find a drawing of the whole thing, and that is the perineum, which some people affectionately call the taint. It taint the balls and it taint the ass. It's that thing right in the middle. It's that little piece of flesh. Because I want to tell you that taint is also more penis. It's more erectile tissue, and all of that has a tremendous amount of sensation and helps with the erection when you can stimulate that little tiny piece that's between the back of the balls and the front of the anus. And then we've got the anus, and then there's the prostate that's deep inside the anus that is also a place of stimulation and of pleasure. I know we get really squeamish around anuses, but that's a whole different workshop, so we'll do that at a different time. All of that is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to arousal. That is but one part of our arousal system, because what it's followed by is the mind. And the mind really plays a key element in our arousal. In fact, it begins here, and there are some who would say that it's really the primary arousal system in our body. That our mind, how we feel about our interaction, how we feel about being intimate with someone, how we feel about our sex, makes a huge difference in how aroused you can get. And again, clients come to me a lot with they've lost their arousal, and what we find out is that when you start to really talk about their sex, what they find out is that there's shame and guilt and abuse and misuse and neglect and just plain old disconnection. And we are in a culture that has disconnected that we keep sex in the closet, it's stinky, it's dark, it's smelly, or it's in a box, you're only supposed to do it this way. Client after client who doesn't go much beyond missionary because anything else feels guilty. And so how to break some of those patterns, how to move out of that pattern of thinking. It's about desire, it's that healthy mindset, it's anticipation. Oh, anticipation, that's a really good one. When you know it's coming and you're looking forward to it and you're wondering how you're going to figure it out. That is an arousal system. Fantasy gets a bum rap, I want to say. Fantasy gets a really bum rap. But there is a place where when I can think and feel and imagine what's possible, it turns on my arousal system. So all of this, body, mind, and arousal, leading to the last one. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, right. When we get our mind blended with our heart. And then when we take our mind and our heart and we add it to our genitalia, now you have a really complete connector that gives us an opportunity to experience and appreciate our arousal. And the last part is the energy. Energy or spirit, whatever that might look like, but it's that connection. It's that place where we move into love and caring and resonance with our partner. How do we get on the same page with our partner? Where is our heart? Where is our emotion? And when you think about that, most of us have experienced some arousal and some sex, maybe without a whole lot of energy. And for me, and what I teach around sacred sexuality, it's a big leap for some people to move into really having their arousal and their sex and their connection be the heart of the sacred. That it is a portal into divine union. I use the term yoni and lingam when I talk about genitalia because yoni is the Sanskrit word for sacred space. It's also the Sanskrit word for home. And lingam is wand of light. That when there is light and heart that comes through the lingam, and the lingam meets the sacred space, that's where we find divine union. And there is an arousal in that excitement and thrill. And so as we think about these areas, what I want to give you tonight is I want to give you the ingredients for creating that arousal in your life. Like, what is the recipe for? What are the ingredients? What do I need to have? And this is tricky because everybody's ingredients and everybody's recipe is really different. I hate bell peppers. There is nothing worse to me than a bell pepper. I can't eat anything that has bell peppers in it. But my mom, she eats them like an apple. She loves bell peppers. That's just the best. So ingredients for arousal are the same. What arouses me is very likely different than what arouses you. And so knowing your own ingredients is what changes the face of your meal. So I think of it like ingredients in a kitchen. So if you come into my kitchen, you're going to find one set of ingredients, and when I come into yours, it's going to quite likely be different. So I'm going to give you my list of ingredients. But what's most important about them is to create a place where you talk to your partner, to the person that you're hoping to be aroused with, and find out the priority. Like, how would you list this list? What's your first ingredient? What's your second ingredient? And what's your third ingredient? And then I'm going to know how to best approach you and get the most success. And the reason I want success is because I want arousal, because I want to live awake. I want to live alive, and I want you to be alive with me. And so I want to share with you so that we can be alive together. So here's my ingredients. First one is the visual, right? I was married for 23 years. I had a drawer of sexy negligee. We just weren't into the visual. It just never got worn, and it didn't happen for whatever reason. That wasn't one that was on top of the list. Now, I got a drawer of lingerie, and I'm at Love Revolution all the time, and that lingerie gets worn. Visual has a new meaning. And so for some people, visual can be that. It can be erotic movies. It can be erotic things. It can be a number of things that move the visual arousal. Environment. So environment, some people really like the environment to be just right. It's important that there are candles and music and clean sheets and heat. That's funny. I didn't mean that to be funny. I'm not one for heat. Environment, how do you like it to be? What do you want? And when your partner knows that what you really love is to make love in the warm summer rain, or what you really love is to be in a perfect candled place, if you know, then you can respond that way. Talk. So back to that sweet former husband of mine, I used to say, a good conversation, we'd go to bed at night, foreplay was 20 minutes of pillow talk. Because I was listened, I was heard, I got to talk, I got to express myself, I got to share, and after that I was aroused. And then there's talk like sexy talk. Do you like sexy talk? Do you like little whispers in your ear? Do you want to hear how fabulous you are? What is it for you? How does talk land in you? Tease, tantalize, and touch. What's that? Is that one that you like? Like, I love the tease of morning coffee and a nibble and a lick and a I'll see you at 5. is arousal to me. I love that kind of arousal. I like touch. I like hand holding. I like riding in the car and having a hand on my knee when I'm driving down the road. There's a place where that kind of touch arouses, and is that one of yours? Invitation and instigation. So here's a really big one for me too. If you don't come my way, I lose interest really fast. And so I like to have instigation come my way. I'm not a big instigator myself. I can be, but really, I know that I like to receive that kind of invitation. I like to receive the instigation coming my way. Intention, drop in deeply to this one. Why do you want to be aroused? Why do you want to sexually be engaged with this person? Sometimes it's physical. You're horny. You're tired. Sometimes you just want to do that so you can sleep well. All of that's fine. It's all good. But what's your deeper intention of wanting to make love or be sexually aroused with this person? And so is the intention one that's on the top of your list. And the last one is novelty and play. Novelty and play in your sexuality. I like food. Chocolate pudding is a huge hit in my life. And so where do you add novelty and play into your sexual interaction with your partner? So here's what I've done for y'all, is I have made little slips of paper that have these listed. And you can get them when you leave, or they're out on the table, but it's got this list here. And I want to invite you all to make a date with the person that you'd like to be aroused with, and I want you to check the menu. I want you to sit with this little thing and create a conversation and a dialogue with your person and find out, how do they rank it? Where's their rank? Where do your ranks match and where do your ranks miss? Where could you add more? What are some ideas? Find out how they get turned on. Find out where their arousal is. And here's my closing point about this. We take the time to, some of us go to the gym to stay healthy, some of us do yoga, we eat right. I bet you there's lots of vegans in the room, dairy-free, sugar-free. You're doing all that, because gluten-free. You're doing all that because you care about your overall wellness. You care about your vitality. You know it makes a difference what you put in your body, how you feel tomorrow. And I'm going to tell you now that how you live an aroused life changes the way in which your life looks. That in being in a state of arousal, in being alive, life is more alive. We come from that core essence of our life force in our sexual arousal center. And when we find our arousal, and when we take responsibility for our arousal, that's when life starts to look juicier, we get more creative, we get more energy, we get healthier. It actually brings us health into our bodies. So how's that for my closing thought of healing through pleasure?